Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My 25 minutes will be spent on how to upbring to use media, how to upbring young persons in digital world where new media are ubiquitous. When we think about it, it is important to realize that 100 years ago, the media world was completely different, and such obvious things as telephone were just surfacing. TV is about 1920s. The internet is 1974, and then there was the explosion. 100 years ago we had nothing, and now we have plenty. So this is the world which got revolutionized when it comes to the tools. But we are all interested what changed socially, how this media changes impacted the social life, how it changed the relations between parents and children, what changed when we were to put it in a nutshell. In comparison with the traditional media, we have an egalitarian sender, and not everyone and not every young person is a sender, and we see big differences in terms of the quality. There are those optimists. The digital dwellers, he's referring to digital wisdom, and he says that the changes make our life better. There are the or digital natives. The new media, the social changes which we see, are bringing more bad things than good things. The quality of our interpersonal relations will worsen. What else changed? Right now we can see how other people are using media. In the old days, somebody in front of the telly could see how their family is using media. Right now, we can see other persons, and they are impacting us. Even if we don't want, they are learning from us and we are learning from them. So we are making influence on others, and others are making influence on us. Media have become an environment of social relations, and they are also modifying them. Right now, what is most important? Many persons say that media, especially internet, are competitive in terms of traditional environment. It is no longer the family or teacher who has the decisive role. The simplest example is the fight of the school with a smartphone. We say it will be troublesome, it will disturb the educational process, because somebody will record something wrong and put it on the internet. So it is treated as a threat. However, there are some signs that there will be an idea how to use it positively. And of course, the oversaturation of the information. Everyone realizes that, but it is important to repeat it and to list all the social consequences which resulted. If I asked, is it a good idea to have a media education, and you will all say, of course. So the answer would be, of course. But the question is how, and this is the key question, because we have this 7th conference, and we've been talking about the whole decade when we started to deal seriously with the media education. Previously, we had some cases of that. However, we have the first decade, which was clearly focused on that. What are the methods? How to answer the questions, whether we are doing a good job or not? First of all, we can see what the young persons are doing right and wrong online, and say whether what we do is coherent, whether it is adequate or relevant, or we are doing things which are not well adjusted. The second question, we can see what is happening on everyday basis and say, well, we are taking into account all the tools and methods, or we are focusing on one thing and not doing other things. But we always have to deal with values. But the fundamental question is why we do it. And depending on how we answer it, we will have an answer whether it makes sense or not. I will give you my perspective after 7 research projects which I've carried out, and you will answer for yourself whether my diagnosis is right. When you sit, you are a very select group of persons. You are educators, you are experts. So you can say, this is not about me. I have my own way. But then you have to think, what is the wider context? What is the mainstream of such educational activities? Not only focusing on the group of experts that we have here, the persons who are focusing on this issue specifically. Okay, now, when we follow this path with our ideas, we are going to focus on education in the internet world. I will say how often it is conducted, but I will also say what it should be like. And I will also answer the questions, showing you the results of the research, but I will also show some of the thoughts that I had. And a moment ago, we used the term media literacy term, and that's right. Just like in the past, if you want to participate in society, you have to read and write. Now, if you want to participate, you have to be able to use new media in the positive way, in an adequate way. But what does it mean? I cannot say about everything, so let me focus on media education at school. And let me start with this notion. How is this education? Very often what happens is that people who are not dealing with that very much are using some general ideas that we have some threats, but often it does not refer to the reality. Let me show you this one slide. This is my research, which I conducted a few years ago. On one hand, we have the answers of teachers and youths. We have the percentages, and sometimes I cover the numbers, and I ask the question to the group of teachers, how many pupils we have who get bored whenever for one day I don't have an access to the internet. And usually people say it's 100%. In reality, it's 40%, but there is this vision that everyone will be bored. Among my interests, the internet is number one. Very often, we believe that this is what everyone thinks. The next question. I see that I'm spending more and more time in front of the internet. And everyone is convinced that it is the majority. There is this stereotype, or a user of internet, and when we tried to understand all the details, it turns out that it does not take into account the competence diversity. And I think that everyone heard about digital inequalities. In the past, it was due to the lack of access to the hardware. Some people didn't have an access to the internet or were afraid to use it. And right now, we no longer see such digital inequalities. Everyone has an access. So what happens is that it is not a result of inequalities. They are resulting from having a lot of access to the hardware, but I cannot use it. And what is very important, as a matter of fact, my research confirms that there is many young persons
who are not able to do simplest things when it comes to safety and security. And we seem to believe that young people have a lot of skills, lots of competencies we can learn from them. And we often say, why should we educate them, as it is the young people who could educate us about what the internet is all about. And there was a group of young people that we dealt very little with. Mr. Plichta performed a study with intellectually challenged children with learning difficulties and other special needs. And it turns out that there are very few studies, if any, and they have a very specific use of the internet and very specific special needs. And no one focuses on that. These children are our pupils. They are part of integrated education, and we have not recognized their needs. So we should target our education, offering solutions that respond to the actual situation. Often, we say that the media education focuses on its technical aspect. Not anymore, but still we teach people how to set a login, a password, how to install software, and we do not take the social aspect into account so much, without understanding why young people do certain things and why they do these things in a certain manner. Mrs. Dunkels, one of the researchers, said that young people focus on technology, so they look for technological solutions, filters, parental control instruments, ways to search, find, to set up procedures. But they do not really accompany young people, and that is the only way to start to understand what is going on. In Poland, a lot of people say media education, well, it should be provided by someone who knows about it. So the IT teacher, for example, or other teachers say, I cannot really do it because my skills and competencies when it comes to technology are not sufficient. I'm not a technology expert. But that is not the point. The point is something else. And let me now share results of other research with you. When do we start dealing with this? Well, we usually start dealing with this once we already have a problem. And that's not right. We should be preventive and proactive in our approach. My study about cyberbullying shows that when there is cyber aggression, where teachers or students are under attack, in my interviews I asked what happened. So one of the teachers said, well, there were threats sent over text message, and this is when I organized a workshop to explain these things to a class. Oh, we had a situation where a teacher was attacked. This is when we organized a workshop about aggression, violence, and their consequences. In another school, an obese girl was under attack, and only after that, special classes were organized. These are concrete examples from Polish schools explaining when the school started to deal with the problem. That was after a situation, after an event, after a problem, not before that. So it turns out that only after happens, after the milk is already spilled, we start dealing with a problem. Our conference focuses on threats, on risks on the internet. It is important. Studies show that there is quite a lot of danger on the internet, but do we pay enough attention to the positive aspect of the use of the internet? And let me say a few words about that. Most studies show that the majority of young people uses the new media in a functional way, which means in a good way. Of course, this does not mention that we should neglect the danger, the threats that exist online, but maybe we should focus on the positive use of the new media. And let me give you a specific example, as without a specific example it's very difficult to explain. So one of the threats is violating copyright laws, or also plagiarism. I often say that new media could be used in schools in a positive way. Smartphones, for example. If a student is to perform an experiment for the biology class at home, growing a bean, a plant, they can make a photograph, they can make videos of that, and they can publish it on a website of the school. And one of the teachers said, yes, this is what I did once, but I will never do it again because 50% of my students brought photographs they had downloaded from the internet. So I'm not doing this again. And okay, my answer was, how are they to learn not to do it? Maybe we should ask students that they should be present on the photograph with their plant and they will not download an image from the internet in such case, because their face would have to appear on the photograph. So we should start using the new media in a positive way with students. The threats, the dangers will become apparent, but they will be encountered in a controlled situation. So focusing on the positive aspect of the use of the internet helps us demonstrate that new media are positive, and it also helps us to deal with difficult and dangerous situations. And how do we teach students? We provide them with material, we organize workshops. These are often interactive workshops. There is also another method which enriches those workshops with a psychological aspect, because we learn our social life in action. When I was a primary school pupil, I remember being part of a group of children who went on excursions with our Russian language teacher. She took us around, showed us that we can pick up garbage when we are in a forest. She was not saying these are workshops on environmental protection. We were not in a class for an hour listening on how we should keep our forests clean. No, we actually went out and we did it. And this is an approach we should actually implement in the use of the new media and in teaching young people on how to use the new media. And let me give you an example. Dr. Kaczmarek-Śliwińska, who is present here with us, wrote a paper about LipDub, something you can make together with your students. It's a video where students make a video clip and the whole school is acting in it. There is a screenplay, and then it is posted online. So where is the upbringing part of it? Well, of course there is, because everyone needs to communicate. There is a creative aspect to it. Young people demonstrate their abilities and their skills, and they improve their self-assessment. And the new media is just a tool here to build social skills that are important regardless of whether we use them in the world of the digital media or not. So we should learn in action. We organize classes, workshops, sometimes interactive workshops it may be, but it is not good enough. The experience of doing something together with a teacher, creating something, is much more valuable. We asked 700 middle secondary school students who they turned to for help if something terrible happened. And we can see that 60% went to their uncles or grandparents, 40% went to their friends, but almost 40% looked for help on the internet, on different internet fora. 16% asked friends that they only know online. And professional help online was only used by 5% of those young people. So young people are not focused on internet only. It's not a pendulum. So it is part of the upbringing if we help young people how to use the internet in a positive way. For example, there is quite a lot of sensible internet fora where young people can look for competent, credible information. Not so many. Not a lot. There are some, but not a lot. We have a lot of help desks, phone lines. Are tutors or teachers available to students via email? Not so often. So we are faced with the question, do we really know how to work with these children, how to educate them, how to bring them up? Very often we say we are experts, we know what it is that the young people need. But if we look at the opinion of young people, the famous cyberbullying, when I asked teachers our students which form of aggression is worse, physical aggression or online. Only 3% of teachers said that digital aggression is less serious. And young people say, in a great majority, that the physical, actual aggression is much more serious, in their opinion, than the digital online aggression. Mrs. Boyd focused on the drama phenomenon. Girls said that they start fights online and they create a flame. It sparks up a discussion. And from the outside, it looks like internet aggression, internet violence. But people who take part in it, they say, well, it's a way to pass time. I do not perceive it as aggression. Such a similar situation is present in video games or online games. People who play those games often do not consider their activity as aggressive. And if I ask teachers, for example, about the students' activity online, so how many of your students write a blog? And teachers say, I don't know, I wouldn't know. So we have no idea about how active our students are online. We often presume that we know things before trying to learn them. And who is to educate? A teacher. Well, but if the competencies and skills of our pupils, our students, are unequal, maybe we should create something like peer-to-peer education. Maybe the more skillful, more educated young people can teach others. For example, a lot of teenagers are not aware of the fact that posts on a social network can have privacy settings. A lot of young people do not know it, but in every classroom there is a student who does. So a lot of people say that young people are able to use technology. Well, okay, so maybe they should teach us about some aspects of the new media.
Często się zbagatelizujemy media tradycyjne. Zobaczcie Państwo, wszyscy mówią.
A lot of people speak about the internet, but how about the television? People seem to neglect the television, and we still have the influence of TV commercials, of TV content, of the media manipulation. We no longer talk about it, and it still exists. Because the internet seems to be isolated from the whole picture of the media. We seem to be focusing on the internet, but we forget about the other media. And we try to treat young people as a different tribe. We seem to think that they are different from us. But now, 6 years after I've started working on this subject, I can say that their developmental needs are the same if we try to remember the needs that we had. We seem to believe that they prefer to meet online rather than face-to-face. But if we look into it deeper, it turns out that they only meet online when they are not able to meet face-to-face. So sometimes we seem to think that they are very different, whereas they are not really all that different from us. Last but not least, we often try to speak about young people online, like people that are offline. People used to say, we have a new quality, things have changed. However, recent studies, and some of them have been mentioned on my slide, show an interrelation. Mr. Leonard studies content creation, and it seems that whatever is created online is also created offline. When people study cyberbullying, it turns out that those people who are aggressive online tend to be aggressive and tend to be bullies offline as well. And we tend to look at these things separately. We do not look at them together. So we try to focus on how to use the digital media, but maybe sometimes we should focus on how not to use the digital media, when to stop using them, when to pause. And even young people say that we have to know when to turn our devices off. they know that they should not submerge completely. So summarizing, I would like to say that
W takiej koncepcji, jaka mi się buduje już od jakiegoś.
so the concept I've been trying to create for quite a while is finally taking shape. So we should accompany young people in their education in the world of the new media. We have a concept of education, and it reminds me of trying to flood young people with this media education, and I say that it should be a drizzle rather than a pouring rain. We should try to saturate these people with knowledge, teach them in action, but slowly, step by step. We should exchange information. Information flow should be a two-way process. I can teach students, but students can teach me. They can teach each other. I could talk a lot about more practical aspects of this education model. So it should be not a lecture, but a meeting, an encounter between students and children. Thank you.